Hello everybody and welcome back to this series on Docker containers. In the last video, we learned about the Dockerfile concepts. So in this video, we'll actually put them to use. In one of my previous videos, we created an SSH server inside of a Docker container, and then we were able to connect to that SSH server from our host system. There was one small problem, and that was that container was not persistent. We built everything inside the container on the fly in order to learn how to do it. But when we destroyed that container, we lost everything. So to improve upon that, in this video, we're going to create that container from a base Ubuntu image and put everything we need in it so that every single time that that container is instantiated, we have everything we need. So let's start by bringing up our Ubuntu shell from the Microsoft App Store on our host system, and I'm going to do a directory listing. You'll see that I have this build_images directory that I created. I want you to go ahead and create that build_images. Hit enter here. It'll create that directory for us. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to change directories into that, and we'll do a directory listing, and you'll see that I have one directory already in here. You don't have to worry about that. It's from a previous video. I created a container to work with our logs and Docker inspect. So from here, let's make a directory called SSH server. This is change directories into that, and this is where we're going to do all of our work. Very first thing I want you to do is I want you to touch Dockerfile. This will put a placeholder file in there for us to edit and change later on. The second thing that we need to do is out of scope of this video. So I'm not going to explain exactly what's going on here. I'm just going to ask you to just follow along. We're going to do an SSH keygen and change the bits on there and create two keys that will be 4096 bits. We're going to go ahead and leave the directory listing that we have here the same. And then I want you to put in a passphrase. And if this is just for fun, you can put in a simple one here. Otherwise, I would suggest you use a strong password here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my password in. Clear the screen. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, just to set up, is we're going to copy from $home.sh ID star and a dot to put that here. So what that did is it went into our hidden SSH folder where these keys were created and copied those keys over to this directory so we can use them. Now we're ready to begin. I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to type into here explorer.exe dot. What this is going to do, it's going to bring up a Windows Explorer in my directory where all these files are already for me. The reason why I'm asking you to do it this way is because it's a little complicated to find the Ubuntu directory where these files are located. The next thing I want you to do is right-click on the Docker file, and you're going to go ahead and open it with your favorite editor. And I'm going to choose to open mine with Microsoft Code. Now Microsoft Code came up here, and I'm ready to begin creating our Docker file. To begin the process, I need to establish my base image. So I'm going to use the from command that we learned in the previous video on concepts of the Docker file, and I'm going to choose Ubuntu 20.04. Now, I want to stop here just for a second and discuss the tag of this base image. I specifically said 20.04. If I were to change this to latest, the problem with doing it this way is if this image changes, everything that you're doing after you establish your base image might rely on the current 20.04 that we actually wanted to do in the beginning of this. And if it becomes 30.04 and some things have changed, you might run into inconsistencies, and that could cause just hardship and for you to troubleshoot, etc. So it's a very good idea to keep your base image consistent The only time that you can upgrade that is when you vetted it and you know that you're actually doing that upgrade, so it won't confuse you for later on. So I'll go back and I'll add the 20.04. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the run command. Now this, if you remember, will run a command during the build process versus the command, which will run it on instantiation of the container, or the entry point, which will override everything and run when the container comes up. So here I'm going to do an apt-get-y update. And what this will do is it'll say, hey, go ahead and update this container, get all of the necessary updates on there so that all my packages are accessible to me, etc. And that -y will say, don't prompt me to confirm it, just go ahead and do it. The ampersand, which is an and, after that, I want you to run -y install, and then we're going to install our OpenSSH server, SSH, Vim. You can install Nano if you want, but I like Vim. Uncomplicated firewall, and that's about it. So here we have everything that we need for this SSH server, and later on we can add to this as necessary, etc. One thing that you might notice if you came over to this video from that previous video on building the SSH server, I said I'm going to pause the video and allow this to come up and then unpause it once everything is up. However, I had to come back because it was interactive and it was asking me for time zones and global regions, etc. So I don't want that to happen here because the build process is one command that runs through, and if it has to ask questions, it'll error out on us. So what I want to do now is I want to avoid that happening by, in front of this command, I'm going to issue an arg command that we learned from the last video. Now this arg command is going to be Debian_frontend equals non-interactive. Now what that will do, it's going to tell the Docker build to execute in a non-interactive way. And the last thing that we're going to do in this particular piece is we're going to utilize our copy command, and we're going to get our SSH key into this container. So here I'm going to say, from my current directory, I want to take the id rsa.pub file, and I want to copy it into the root.ssh folder of my container. And this is it for now. And as we continue the process, you'll see why I'm stopping here, but we are going to add to this a little bit later. So let's go ahead and save this file and build our container. So I'll minimize this, and we're back at our SSH server directory. And now we're ready for our next command, which is the Docker build command. So what I'm going to do a Docker build -t, which is going to be the target name of our server, which I'm going to use my SSH server as my name, and I'm going to give it a version 1.0 as my tag. And then lastly, I'm going to say, what is the location that I'm going to look for that Docker file in to build this container with, which is my current directory, so I can just hit a dot here to say here. And then when I hit enter, we should have our container get built. Okay, our container is completed. Now I fast forwarded in the video because it'll make the video a little too long, but it took about 130 seconds for this one to build. And if you look right here, you can see that it used the Ubuntu 2004 image from the Docker.io library. It also ran the apt-gets and installed the software that we needed right here. Also, it copied our files into our destination of root.ssh, exported it, named our server, and it's done. So I'm going to go here, we'll clear the screen, we'll do a Docker images, and you'll see our new images right here, created about a minute ago. And finally, let's go ahead and quickly access this server and see what's going on. So I'm going to go back a couple of directories so that we can have a longer line to work with. And I'm going to do a Docker run in interactive mode with terminal. I'm going to remove the container when I'm completed. I'm going to give it a name of SSH server for now. I'm going to issue the name of the server that I want to run, or the name of the container I want to run with the tag. And then I'm going to say I want a bash shell to run on entry point into this container when it is instantiated. And we're good here. If I do pwd, I'm at the root. Let's change to our root directory, .ssh directory, do a listing, and there we see our id_rsa pub file. So we're good to go here. And everything looks like we're ready for our next steps. So I think this is a good stopping point for us. In the next video, we'll continue preparing this SSH container and complete the final steps. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.